everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about creating some stunning backgrounds with stencils and perfect pearls. To get started, I'm going to work on the background panel first, and I have a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock that I've die cut to an A2 sized panel using the largest Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I'm creating a ink blended background, and I'm using several shades of green distress inks. I have crushed olive, mowed lawn, pine needles, and I do bring in a little bit of forest moss. However, I decided that it was just too dark for the background look that I was going for in that corner, and then I just applied mowed lawn right over that to kind of take away some of the intensity of that dark green. I just randomly ink blended these shades of green distress inks across the panel, trying my best to blend out any harsh lines. However, after I apply the perfect pearls, it's hardly going to be noticeable. For this card, I'm bringing in a stamp and a stencil from the latest Heffy Doodle release. Now this stencil is called Fancy Foliage, and I'm going to bring in my Pixie spray to spray that down so that it will stick to my background panel. And since my room is not very well ventilated, I took my stencil outside and sprayed it down, waited for about a minute, and then I was ready to apply it to my panel. Here I'm taking the perfect medium and pouncing it in so that it gets into those small spaces of the design of that stencil. Now this came in the Perfect Pearls set that I had purchased. However, if you don't have the perfect medium, you certainly can use Versamark ink and it will do the same job. I'm just taking a fairly thin brush. This brush came in with the kit that I had bought, and I'm just dipping the brush into the powder, and then I'm just swiping it across my panel to allow it to stick to my background. And then I'll go across the entire panel, adding just a little bit of that powder. A little bit goes a long way. And then I'm taking a piece of paper that I can shake off the excess powder and picking up a thicker brush and swiping anything extra that comes off onto that background paper. I can just funnel back right into the little pot and use it another time. I'm going to set the background aside and move on to the images. For this birthday card, I'm using the newly released Chimply the Best stamp set. I decided to use all of the images of the monkeys as well as some of these smaller images onto my card front. And here I'm just lining up the images into my Misty. And then I can pick them up with the door of the Misty and stamp them out. I have a piece of Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock in there, and I'm using Memento Tuxedo black ink because I'm going to Copic color these images. I do go ahead and stamp out the images a couple of times just to get a nice dark outline of these guys. I've left the coloring in, however, I have sped it up quite a bit. I will have the color combinations that I used for all of the images listed over on my blog, which I will link to down below, in case you're interested in checking that information out. My typical style is that I like to have several shades for an image, or actually an area of the image. I feel like it gives me a better blend. So you certainly don't have to use all of the shades that I use, but just that that's how I learned and how I color. I also color typically from dark to light, but I do have my lightest shade. I add that first just to wet the paper. I feel like this gives me a better starting surface to work with. So for now, I'm just going to turn on some music and finish coloring these images in, and then I will see you in a moment to finish the card off. I finished coloring the images and I used my scan and cut to cut them out. For the sentiment, I'm using It's Your Birthday, Go Bananas. I'm taking a piece of black cardstock that I'm treating with anti-static powder. This will help eliminate any oils left on my cardstock that will cause the embossing powder to stick in unwanted places. And then with my sentiment on an acrylic block, I've added Versamark ink. Then I've stamped it down onto my cardstock, and I'm going to use some white embossing powder and heat set that in place using a heating tool. For the background with the perfect pearls, I'm misting some water and then running my cardstock underneath that mist. This will help to set the powder so that it doesn't rub off onto the recipient's fingers. At this point, I have all of my components ready and I can start adhering everything down. I'm directly adhering the Perfect Pearls background panel to an A2 size card base using some liquid adhesive. And that little bit that's hanging over, I just trimmed that off with my scissors. I did color and cut 3 binds out, and I'm just positioning those across the top of the panel, just using some liquid adhesive. Next, I'm taking the sentiment strip that I've trimmed using my trimmer, and then I'm taking a piece of fun foam and adhering it to the back, and then I could just place that in the bottom right corner using some liquid adhesive. And then I've arranged those adorable little monkeys kinda hanging off the vines, being silly. And I have popped them up with foam squares before I adhere them to my card. And that will complete this card. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching my video. I hope you found it inspiring and enjoyed it. I will have a list of all of the supplies that I used in this video description area below, as well as in my blog. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will see you next time.